welcome to On Call After Hours, where we answer the questions we weren't able to get to during the broadcast portion of our show. All of your questions are important to us, and we want to answer as many as we can for you. So let's just dive right on in. Quick answers now. Rapid City. Well, actually, I wanted to ask Lon about HPV. What is HPV, and what is an important issue that we need to say about it?
Human papillomavirus.
What virus?
Yes, and it prevents cancer, prevents cervical cancer, and other cancers. So it's very important. You get it when you're 11 or 12 years of age. It's a 3-dose series. Go in and get it, girls and boys.
All right. Julie, any comment about HPV?
No, it is a cancer prevention vaccine, and I think it's important that people appreciate that it's not just about cancer in girls. It is also about cancer in boys.
Okay. And from Rapid City, why can you not get the shingles vaccine if you've gone through chemo? Julie.
The issue is the immunity and the need to make sure that you have a strong enough immunity to not get infection from the vaccine. This is a live attenuated vaccine, meaning that there's still living viruses in it, even though they're not strong enough to cause disease in healthy people. There's a chance that in someone with a very weak immune system that they could get a rash or an actual local infection, or even potentially a disseminated infection from the vaccine, although we haven't seen that in very many cases. So the recommendation is for people with significant immunosuppression that they not be vaccinated with the shingles vaccine. Hopefully there'll be a vaccine available for those people in the future that is a different form and would be safe even with profound immunosuppression.
Wow. From Centerville, this 87-year-old caller had all the childhood illnesses. Is she at risk for any of those illnesses since she's never been vaccinated? Lon.
Well, some of us born before 1957 are excluded, or we don't need to have the MMR, the measles vaccine. So if you're of a certain age, and then maybe not. And if you've had the disease, like if you have documented chickenpox, you don't need it. But we're getting fewer and fewer people that suffer that disease. So be sure and check.
All right. So if you were born before 1957, don't get the MMR.
Yeah, you're excluded in certain situations.
All right. Okay with that, Julie?
Yeah, basically because it was so common, and you assume everybody who was born before the vaccine had the disease, so they're naturally immunized.
Yeah. Shingles vaccine, if you've already had the shingles. Julie, I'll ask you that one because they come at me a lot. The people who sell it say, well, after 1 year, it's still advantageous. Is that what you say?
That is the recommendation, that having had shingles in the past is not a contraindication to being vaccinated. The idea is if you've ever had chickenpox, you're at risk for shingles. And since most older people had chickenpox, they were born before the vaccine, everyone who has ever had chickenpox could get shingles. What causes it to crop up again locally in the shingles rash is not at all clear. It's kind of a mystery why suddenly you have the chickenpox virus crawl down a nerve and erupt in this very painful rash. But there is a boost to the immune system when you get the vaccine. And I think the theory is by keeping your immunity as high as possible, you minimize the chance that that's going to happen again.
That makes me feel, that answers a lot of questions I've had. Caller had Guillain-Barré syndrome and has been told she cannot receive the influenza vaccine. What is her best approach to preventing influenza? Does Guillain-Barré prevent getting influenza? You know the answer to that?
It is one of the contraindications.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things is a rare case of Guillain-Barré, although there was a lot of talk about cases of Guillain-Barré as a result that wasn't proven.
Well, in Guillain-Barré, Campylobacter causes Guillain-Barré, and we have a lot of Campylobacter in South Dakota, so there's many causes of it. So, but it is one of the contraindications. Talk to your physician. Talk about it. Don't just jump to conclusions.
Right, and if they came to me, I would say, Julie Gerberding, what would you say about that?
So the concern about Guillain-Barré and influenza came out of the years ago swine flu scare, where a vaccine was made very quickly, and there were an excess number of cases of Guillain-Barré that year. And I think if there was ever a situation where there wasn't an association that seemed to look causal from an epidemiologic perspective, it was that 1 year of the swine flu vaccine. Having Guillain-Barré is not an indicator that the flu vaccine would cause it to come back again, because as you said, it's usually Campylobacter or some gastrointestinal problem. But if that's the recommendation from the clinician, I would certainly adhere to it.
Sioux Falls caller had shingles at 13. Does this put him at risk for getting shingles again? Should he get the shingles vaccine ASAP? Lon?
I would think so, because we just talked about the the 1 year gap. So.
Yep, 1 year gap. So.
I would just caution that, you know, the label or the indication for shingles vaccine is really only for people over 50. So while an individual doctor may decide that it's important enough in a particular person to give the vaccine, that would be an off-label use. And it's important to remember that the studies of the safety of the product have only been conducted in people who are age 50 and older.
Okay. Sioux Falls, can the caller get a Tdap, flu shot, and pneumonia vaccine at the same time? Lon? Don't know.
I don't know. I'd have to talk to the nurse about that.
Yeah, look it up. Julie?
I didn't hear the list, but generally speaking, their studies are done with the concomitant use, and it depends to some extent on the age and which studies have actually been done. So you have to check the label of the vaccine. It will say on the product insert what it can be delivered with.
Okay. Is there a reason that viruses such as HIV and now the Ebola originate in Africa? Is there something about conditions of animals or species, or any comment about that?
Animals and humans live very close together in Africa, and there's more opportunity for things to mix up there. We in South Dakota, we have animals, but we live in our houses and they live in their field. In Africa, there's a much closer relationship, so there's more opportunity.
Well, and the fruit bat is the major vector, I think, and when its fecal material lands upon your garden or on something, it can share it that way, right?
And Africa has incredible biodiversity too, so there's a lot more animals, there's a lot more going on there in a tropical environment.
Infections in the other animals, and of course bushmeat, which is, you know, at risk. Any take on that, Julie?
I agree with everything you said. I think the bushmeat issue is really an important perspective as we see people moving into rural areas and having more access to potentially infected animals. It isn't eating the meat per se that causes the problem. It's the killing and the preparation of the mammal that exposes people to the blood, which carries the Ebola virus. So cooked meat is probably not hazardous, but the process of getting the live animal prepared to eat is what really creates the exposure situation.
And Africa has a great many wild primates. Chimpanzees, gorillas, baboons, monkeys, who are very close to the human immunologically and disease-wise, and that also fosters this relationship and bleeding over into humans.
If schools require proof of children having their shots, how was it possible for so many children to come down with whooping cough this spring in spearfish schools? Whooping cough and spearfish.
We had a number of unvaccinated children.
These were unvaccinated kids.
Unvaccinated children started it, and what we're seeing now is this phenomenon of whooping cough in a vaccinated community. The immunity seems to be waning after a number of years. So once it gets going, the bacteria gets going in the unvaccinated children, and then it's spread out to children who were vaccinated.
So it's harder, but it can still occur.
Yes, and we go back to herd immunity. We want to keep it, but you know, we're having upticks now in whooping cough nationwide and in South Dakota too.
I've heard there are 2 different flu vaccines. Why doesn't everyone get the same vaccine? What is the criteria for getting one vaccine versus another? And I think Julie answered that, the higher dose. Is there anything more?
Well, there's the one with the 3 components and the one with the 4 components and some with the boosted and yeah, there's more options because different people have different needs. I think it's good.
I like the 4. I like the 4 option.
That's what I got this year.
That's what I'm going to get on Monday. Is there any place to test for brain tumors for someone without insurance. So this is not related to vaccines, but it's a question that somebody called in, and my answer is that we underrate the physical exam and the history. And a physician or a nurse practitioner, PA, can carefully take a history and do a careful neurologic exam. There may not be a need to do a CAT scan. So a person who thinks they may have a brain tumor, let's start with the examination and let the physician examine you, think about it, and then if it's something that we should do, that's another story. I think without insurance, there's some things, it's going to be a lot less than a lot of things in life. Well, I want to thank you for joining us on our website. We appreciate all of your questions and the opportunities to answer them. Be sure to join us next week on South Dakota Public Broadcasting at our regular time, talking about the heart. Call in or email your questions and watch for our columns in your local newspaper. Listen to our Prairie Doc Conversations radio show on a station near you, and follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. So until next time, thank you both for being on this evening show, and stay healthy out there, people.
Thank you.